everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and I'm here today with my special guest, the Real Plaid Rabbit.
One and the same.
And should I call you Plaid or Rabbit?
Yes.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about a mutual fandom. We're going to be talking about The Tick.
Behold.
And we're going to be talking about, our topic for today is the live-action version of The Tick versus the animated series. Now, first of all, you were never a big fan of the comics, right?
I had little exposure to the comics before I saw a lot of the animated series and the live action.
So
I have read some of the comics, but I am not by any means an expert on them.
And of course, the animated series was my first real exposure to the Tick, and I know I watched it first season when I was a kid, and then didn't watch much more of it until I met you, and watched lots of it after that.
I have that effect on people.
So you, what was your first reaction when you first saw the live action version? Because of course, you had a good stake in that after having seen the animated version 12 times an episode at least.
I had extremely high hopes for the live action series. Knowing the animated series as well as I did by that point, and knowing that Ben Edlund was still involved and creatively in charge of it. I was delighted with Patrick Warburton's Tick. I could have watched him for a lot longer.
Which is quite a different version than the other one. He struck me as kind of dumber.
He is more like the Tick of the second or even the third season than of the first season, because in the animated series, the Tick began as simply strange, and kind of gradually developed into the dynamic by the second or even the third series, where he got a little bit Homer Simpson-y.
Yeah.
And it became more Arthur being sane and sensible to the Tick being completely stupid, which was not a great direction, and I'm sort of glad they didn't go any farther in it.
Yeah.
The live series seemed to pick up on that.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of episodes like The Tick versus Reno, Nevada.
Yes.
With the Finn, and where he goes to Reno and he just gets obsessed with gambling and kind of falls out of the loop for nearly half the episode. And
yeah, he really isn't in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several of those later in the animated series. And when in the live action series the Tick was at his most that way, was probably when he was the least appealing to me. But there is so much of the just plain strange, such as talking to the toilet,
right?
And when Arthur is institutionalized, that they walked a line there. I think they walked it reasonably well.
I think they did too. The live action series naturally was made more for adults than the animated series, and I think the animated series had to really lean on being clever.
Yes.
Because it couldn't just simply be a kid show, because Ben Edlund wasn't going to let that happen. He wanted it to still be what it was, but it couldn't be so bizarre.
No,
as the comics, because I mean, in the comics, you had a Tick who cursed, you had a Tick who made references to lots more adult kinds of things, and the live action series
in the Tick's way, of course,
in his own way, yeah. In the live action series, I mean, he still didn't understand sex or anything, but the live action series didn't go quite that far. But it was billed as a sitcom, so it had to get to at least farther.
They went
than the
farther into
series.
territories than the animated series naturally could not go to, and I'm still not sure whether that really helped or not, because adult humor is difficult that way. It can really fail to actually be funny if, as an audience member, you're not at a kind of Beavis and Butthead place where anything that seems dirty will make you laugh.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the adulty things, or the kind of ridiculous relationship between Captain Liberty and Bat Manuel,
mm-hmm.
and the hints at her relationship with everybody else in the universe.
Right.
That was, haha, we're an adult series now.
Right.
And yet at the same time, it did not really give rise to many jokes that were actually all that funny.
Not for the most part, although, I mean, I thought when Batman had jokes about it, they were often very funny, and Captain Liberty simply didn't have a lot to do.
They made they put themselves in a corner by making Captain Liberty too much default the butt of any joke that's going to be made.
That's right,
and that's another difference between the animated series, because American Made...
Well, she was the straight man.
Could not and would not ever be the butt of any joke. Mm-hmm. American Made is always to be taken seriously.
Which I always thought was really cool, because, I mean, not that American Made's like my favorite character, but I always thought that was cool because it's like, you got a chick who throws shoes at people and is completely straight-laced. Sees everything as completely serious. It's fantastic.
And is not an ingenue, and is not a chance for a cleavage joke, and is not, is a real character, and she's female. And there's no question about that, but that's not what she's about.
I'm reminded of the difference between Space Ghost Coast to Coast and Cartoon Planet.
Yes. There's some of that same...
And I found that my favorite stuff from the jokey Space Ghost stuff Cartoon Network did was more from Cartoon Planet than was from Coast to Coast, because Coast to Coast seemed like we're an adult show, so we have to try to be adult. And I felt like the live action series had that a little bit, although happily they still had a lot of really quotable lines.
Yes.
And they still managed to get a lot of that clever in there. And from the pilot, which was written by Edlin, I immediately went, oh god, this show's going to be way better than I ever thought it could possibly be.
No wonder it was the best episode.
Yeah, and it is the best episode. And then, talking about, like, Captain Liberty and cleavage jokes and all that kind of stuff, then you end up with episodes like, and once again, I mean, it's only a 9-episode show, and so it's unfortunate that it does have a couple of duds. You've got stuff like the episode where she is in a magazine with new pictures. Remember that? And, like, there's just nothing good in that episode.
Yeah. That's something. They used the extra room to be adult, and they did not get any comic mileage out of it.
Yeah.
Why bother?
The ones that really worked were the ones where they remembered it was a superhero show, so it could still be a sitcom and be a superhero show, and I like that, because you had a lot of fans who complained at the very beginning, oh, there's not enough fights in the show, there's not enough actual Tick going out and fighting people, but it's like, okay, it's a sitcom, so you have to deal with that. And it's like, okay, who cares, as long as it's funny.
It started with an origin episode, and that's always a different sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
And the Tick's origin especially does not lend itself to the kind of action powerhouse that, mid-season Tick episodes would.
Yeah. Although there's more action in that first episode than there is anywhere else.
True.
Granted, the biggest fight happens off screen with silhouettes, but...
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've got a villain, you've got the Red Scare. We don't really get a villain until, like, 5-6 episodes later. And by the way, for folks that are watching this and have only ever seen it on DVD, which I would guess is probably most of us, although I saw it when it was on, the DVD order is entirely different than it was aired. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Tick versus the Terror, or actually, I'm sorry, the episode is simply called The Terror in the live-action series. On the DVDs, it happens right after the pilot.
And it was the last one aired.
Make any kind of sense, because if you watch it in order on the DVDs, it's only a year has passed between the first and the last, or the first and this episode, and that's very bizarre.
Yeah. I don't know what motivated them to order the DVD the way they did, but a lot of the motivations of the folks behind the live action series left me wondering. And in some ways, it did not surprise me that it failed so quickly, because there were so many strange, arbitrary decisions that simply didn't work.
Yeah.
And that was where the live-action series became, to some extent, a disappointment. It was like they hadn't really thought it through.
Although I felt by the end of it that it was gonna get better. You know what I mean? Because you keep in mind that first seasons are always hard to really get a good sense of what we're doing.
And you've got time to learn how to write the characters.
Yeah.
And that's why Ben Edlund writing the pilot resulted in so much better writing. Edlund knows these people very, very well, and the other people they brought on to write clearly didn't.
What's funny is just as I had some of the same problems with the animated series, where some of my favorite lines came from some of the worst episodes. It was really interesting, where you could have a bad episode that had really awesome lines in it. Like I'm not a big fan of the episode where they kill off the immortal. Like, that's just silly. But that whole speech at the funeral, hilarious. Did you know that even fiddler crabs can die? This is hilarious.
I mean, the Tick's rants are always if nothing else works in an episode, live or animated, the Tick's rant is always a chance for something good.
Yeah, and actually he didn't have enough of them in the live action, in my opinion.
That's a thing that probably hurt it.
Because the animated series had a formula that worked. You know what I mean? Where like at the end of every episode, he's got to have one of those.
And it fit in, it fit into the cartoon show for kids that had the moral at the end.
Right, and it was kind of making fun of that.
And so we parodied that, except the Tick's morals, of course, were always from left field, because the Tick is from left field.
Well, hey, we're all out of time. Do you want to do another part on this?
Let's do.
Okay, let's do another part on this.